It is my esteemed pleasure to introduce my colleague, Steve Castro. He's a co-founder of ClickShake Games, also a co-founder of the Ohio Game Developer Association, and has been one of the partners in crime at getting the Expo sorted out. So he is going to be a sort of surprise hit for the Expo. He's going to talk for a little bit about some of his experiences. So please, welcome Steve Castro.
Well, thank you. Too kind. Just so you know, Matt Maroon is not going to be making it today. Some of you may have heard. He was unfortunately in a fender bender. We believe he's okay. That's why some of the scheduling is being rearranged. And hopefully you guys can hang in there with us as we're adapting to that. But I'm ready to adapt. So I've got a talk that I wanted to give, just a short little thing. And hopefully you guys could participate with me and let me know what questions you have and stuff. So just so you know a little bit more about me, I'm a programmer, game developer, entrepreneur. I do game design. So in 2010, I started ClickShake Games. And I worked with a guy from Canada, and we made a game called Ballads of Remus. We won an indie prize for that game. That's out in the showcase area that you could check out. But what I want to talk about today is, you know, a lot of the speakers have been talking about how to be a good business person. And I know a lot of people might be more interested in, you know, actually making games and not necessarily like, oh, you know, making the money and doing the marketing and all this kind of stuff. I'm curious, like, how many are students in here right now? A lot of you, okay. Maybe half? You know, especially when you're a student, I think you're not necessarily thinking about like, you know, how am I going to be paying my bills and this and that? You know, it's kind of boring stuff, you know. But I'm not going to talk about like how to be a good businessman, because what I want to talk to you about today is I want you to be an entrepreneur. So I'm basically telling you, you should want to be an entrepreneur. You know, an entrepreneur is somebody who starts a business. And the reason I'm saying that is because you know, in today's world, like, you know, the unemployment is really high, and a lot of times we blame the government on that, and we're like looking to the president, like, come on, man, you got to get the unemployment rate down. You know, but the thing is, like, even if, you know, the government can do things to get the unemployment rate down and all this and that, you know, the reality is that technology has replaced and displaced a lot of jobs. You know, it's not necessarily the government's fault. This is what we've asked for. And so what that means is, you know, you've got a lot of work being done by like robots and stuff. And what that means is that, and this applies to not just, you know, game developers, but really any discipline, I think, you know, going forward in this high-tech society, I think it's important for us to create our own opportunities. And, you know, a lot of this expo that we put together, you know, it's kind of about that theme, you know, like start a game business, you know, go out there and be a contractor even, you know, maybe you're still working with people, but, you know, managing the contracts and stuff. If you can learn about that, then you can make games and keep making games and make a living at it. You know, when I was in college, I would do a lot of like experimenting with games specifically. Not a lot of drugs or anything, but you know, I was just trying like different games. But once I decided to go full time and make games for a living, you know, basically once I got out of college, I realized, look, I'm going to be working 40 hours a week. I'm going to be tired at night. I could try to make games on the side, but if I want to make games and keep doing that for years to come, I'm going to have to figure out a way to make some money at this, you know? I never wanted to be a business person. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Like, you know, I think maybe when I was in high school. I don't know when I learned it, but, you know, eventually I just decided that, you know, I want to keep doing this. And I'm in Ohio. It's not like there's, you know, all these companies just lining up saying, hey, will you come work for us? You know, come make games for us. So I'm like, you know, I'm going to just do it. I'm just going to take the plunge. I had some savings, and, you know, I started up ClickShake Games. And I really don't regret it. I mean, because I've learned so much. And so let's see. You know, like when I was in college, too, and this is really important, a lot of people, you know, when they're in college, they like to go to, you know, they go to class, they do their homework, you know, they're a good student, but after class and after you've done your homework, you know, you want to relax. It's your free time. You know, you want to go partying, you know, have some drinks, and that's great. You know, it's really good to socialize. But, you know, honestly, there's a lot of people that are doing that. And if you want to ever work for somebody, you know, you have to rise above that. You have to do something a little bit more so that you get that job or you get that contract. And so you can see what I'm talking about here is be an entrepreneur is not just go start a company. It's think like an entrepreneur, because even if you want to go work for somebody, that's going to make you employable. That's what's going to enable you to go and make a living doing what we love to do, which is to make games. So, all that stuff that might have seemed maybe a little boring about the statistics and, the marketing and stuff, pay attention to that, because even when you're applying to a company, you're marketing yourself. You're making a value proposition to that company. And the fact that you went through college and graduated is great. It's a great accomplishment. But honestly, it's like bare minimum. If you're a programmer, let's say, you might be able to go out into the workforce and without necessarily a lot of experience and get like an entry-level programming job. Even that can be kind of hard in today's economy, but you might be able to do it and kind of learn on the job, how do I make business software? Because honestly, there's an art to business software. For those people who program business software, I don't want to diss any of you, but it's kind of a straightforward process. It's something you can learn on the job. A lot of business softwares, a lot of websites are. Video games are not, it's not a website. It's not, a data entry application. It's a dynamic system that takes, some intuition. It takes passion. These aren't things you learn in your classes. You learn the fundamentals. But when you're talking to a potential client, or if you're talking to a potential employer, you've got to show that you understand that, you have that intuition, and the only way to have done that is to take some of that free time and just make games. I hope a lot of you guys, if you want to get into making games for a living, if it's something you enjoy doing, I hope that you're doing it. If you enjoy it, why wouldn't you take some of your free time to do it? Because you're not going to probably do it a lot in your classes. And I have to say too, when you do like a senior project, for instance, you're probably not going to be able to take that senior project and show that to your employer and say like, oh yeah, here's my portfolio, aren't you impressed? Because they're not impressive. Like I said, everyone who graduated with your degree has a similar, senior project. It's when you've done more. And this is the idea of thinking like an entrepreneur, taking some risk, trying something new, just kind of really putting yourselves out there. You got to do it. Whether you want to make games or not, you really got to do it in today's world. So, that's just something to think about, especially when you're a student. You still have time to get into that if you're not already doing that. And, I really have to say, like the games I made in college, I think, I'll tell you a story. When I was in college, like I said, I was experimenting with different game designs. I made a game called Rooftop Skater, and this is in 2001. I put it up on like Newgrounds. I was just having fun. I was playing like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I just wanted to make my own little version. And the thing like started taking off, and like a lot of people played it. Like I was in Florida and some dude was like, yeah, I played this game Rooftop Skater. I was like, yeah, I made that. He's like, no way, that was you. That's so cool, So I actually got contacted by Sports Illustrated for Kids because I had put that out there and because it was getting attention. It was on a Tech TV Sight of the Night. They had a cable channel called, I think it was Tech TV or something like that. And so, and this is just me in my free time putting something out there. It was basically my portfolio. I had a website, and that's kind of when I realized, like, Sports Illustrated for Kids, when they contacted me, they wanted me to do a different version, to change up the art, and they were going to pay me basically for a game that I had already made. And I was like, oh my God, you can make money at this? This is amazing. So I kind of lucked out, but I think there's a lot of opportunity like that to really put yourself out there, because you could email someone saying, hey, you need any games made? But more than likely they don't, or they do and they already got a guy. A company will typically need, they'll decide we want to make a game. Maybe it's an educational game. Maybe it's, a game that can market a product. Maybe it's a legitimate just entertainment game, and they want to make it and they want to branch into that. A lot of times they're going to go out and look at what have people done. They're not going to wait, who's going to email us to make this game. They're going to look and see, oh, this guy has made a game that's kind of like what we want to do. So by just having that out there and just continually improving your portfolio, like I said, not just the stuff you do in school, but the stuff that you really put your passion in and it shows. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's really going to create opportunities for you. And, you know, as far as like creating jobs in this country or anywhere else in the world, I mean, that's really what we need. We need entrepreneurs. And a lot of, you know, our country was kind of founded on hardworking people that kind of created their own opportunities. So, you know, we kind of we need more of that. So I definitely encourage you, you know, think about being an entrepreneur. Think about how you can market yourself. You know, try to think about the business principles. Just know about them. Be aware of them. You know, tinker with ideas and just try stuff. You know, one thing I will say, though, too, is it's important to realize the transition from that to going full-time, too. Because the moment you decide to go full-time, it's important that you're not still experimenting. You know, put down the drugs, put down all your little game concepts, and pick an idea and really focus on that one. You know, because once you go full-time, there's going to be days when you're like, you know, I don't feel like making a game today. I don't feel like programming. You know, I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. But today, I'm a little tired. I'm a little hungry. I'm a little sad. But you know what? Now it's your job. And, you know, that's when it's important to execute and stay the course and stick to it. You know, because I think even with ClickShake Games, you know, ClickShake for us was kind of an experiment in a lot of ways. Where we're like, you know, what if we could just do exactly what we want to do and make a living at that? And, you know, who wouldn't want to do that? You know, we kind of tried it, and along the way, you know, we would start a little project that was our interest at the moment, and then just, oh, now we're a little interested in this. You know, I think overall we didn't do that too much, but, you know, the fact that we did it at all makes me think now that, you know, we could have been further along. You know, we could have been in a better position if we hadn't done that. So, you know, it's important to realize that it is a little different when you go full-time and you stay the course when you want to make that decision. So, you know, until you're ready to do that, you know, just keep doing maybe side contracts or something while you're making other games. You know, because for us, we do make our games and then we market them to people, but we also do game contracts. And I think we've been very fortunate that, you know, we didn't have to do contracts that were like websites or business applications. But, you know, if there weren't game contracts, we would have been willing to do them because, you know, you got to do what you need to do to kind of pay the bills and keep funding your own personal projects. So, you know, that's why I say be an entrepreneur. You know, start something, take a risk, you know, save up some money and go for it. And, you know, I hope that, you know, people that are here see that we have a community that's growing. There's momentum here. And what I hope is, you know, with this community, you have people that you can bounce ideas off of. You know, you can pull from this community for your talent. You know, you can meet an artist or a programmer, you know, and just start something and see where it goes. So let's see if I had anything else I wanted to cover here. I think something that's really important to understand is you do want to go full-time and you're doing the independent route. And what I mean by independent is, let's say you had $30,000 saved up and you're just going to go full-time. You know, you don't have outside funding. It's going to dry up. You're just going to make games and hope you can make it. Then it's important to understand kind of what the salary range is for that and to understand if that fits your lifestyle. You know, there's a report, I can't remember which company does it, but they put out a salary report every year. And it's kind of an amalgamation of all the statistics of people that respond to what their salaries are. And basically for an individual indie developer, the salary is about $20,000. For a team of 2 or more people, the average salary is maybe $40,000. Which, you know, if you have an apartment, if you don't have kids, if you're not married, I mean, that's doable. I mean, to me, that's very encouraging. That's very exciting. But it's also a lot lower than what you might make if you just go the other route, you know, of, you know, I'll go out of college, I'll start doing business software, I'll start doing, you know, product marketing, and those are legitimate paths. So it's kind of just important to understand if you're going to take that risks, you know, what are the risks, and understand that. Obviously, you can make a lot more, but as some of the other speakers have talked about, you know, you can also lose a lot. But that's what you need. You got to take risks, like I've said a million times. So yeah, I mean, take a look at those salary reports. There's different salary reports for, you know, artists, programmers, business developers. It's very, very detailed. So I really encourage you guys to go out and get that report. I will put it on the website so you guys can go and check it out. I think it's like $10 and you get the whole report. And you could go back so many years and just kind of look at the trends. It's good to be aware of that kind of stuff. So let's see what else I got here. So this is something else. I think when you're a game developer, the reason you get into making games is because you want to make really cool things. And you've got a lot of cool ideas. And, it's like you want to do all these great ideas. And something will come to your mind and you're like, man, it would be awesome. It'll be a great game, a great feature. Or, I'll do this, multiplayer interaction thing on my site and it'll be awesome. Let's do it. Let's go. And, the thing is, there's a lot of good ideas that you need to not do. And that's very hard to do. I'm so serious. I think it was Steve Jobs was attributed as saying that, oh man, I can't even remember, I'm sorry, but it's something like, success is not about having a good idea, but knowing which good ideas to not do. I'm paraphrasing, and maybe Facebook lied to me and he wasn't the one who actually said that, but it's a really cool quote. And that's a very hard thing to do. I mean, a lot of people think that the hardest part is having a good idea, and I think the hardest part is saying no. And, even when we run this expo, we could have spent so much money, and these guys were probably a little annoyed at me because I was like, why do we need that? Do we actually need to do that? Yes, it's an amazing idea. I'm going to give you an example. This is really real. I'm getting real with you guys, so hopefully you're cool with that. These lanyards, man, we wanted to have like OGDE, 2013 right on the lanyard. And it would have cost us like $300 or $400 more to do that. And I'm like, look, what are you going to do with these lanyards? When you get home, you either throw it away, you toss it in a drawer, you'll never look at this again. You're not going to reuse it. So we got black and white ones. It's functional. And instead, we put more of that money into these little booklets because this is a keepsake. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, it would have been cool to have that on the lanyards, but focus on what matters. Focus on what's actually going to get you the bang for your buck. That is thinking like an entrepreneur. That is what makes you, marketable as an employee or a contractor, is that kind of thinking. And talking about value, it's important to recognize that, as an entrepreneur, yeah, you think about money, but it's not just money, it's value. What do people value? What will people show up for? What do people care about? And when you think about what you're making and how it's a contribution to society that other people want, that other people value, that's thinking like an entrepreneur. And, on America's Got Talent, they have this guy, he makes a little swan out of gum with his tongue. And it must have taken him a long time to figure out how to do that. But the judges reamed him because nobody cares. Just because you're talented at something, just because you're talented at something and you spent a lot of time preparing for that thing doesn't mean it's valuable. If for something to be valuable, you have to understand, like I said, what other people want. Bringing it back to games, I'm sure we all have dreams about the game I wanted to make. But if you make it in such a way that's so, personal to you that other people can't relate to it, other people can't connect, it isn't valuable to them. And what's going to happen is you will have made your game that you wanted to make if you don't run out of money first, if you didn't have to take a different job because you couldn't afford to finish it. And then even if you get to that point, you've got a game that can't sell and you're done making games because you got to eat, you got to get a job somewhere. So that's why it's like, if you can just think about that a little bit without letting it, hamper your creativity too much. You got to be creative because people are going to look for that too. If it's all about the money, yeah, people can see that. And companies like Zynga, a lot of times they get a lot of flack for that, It's very clear they're a lot about the money and not necessarily about some of the games. So, yeah, people will push back on that kind of stuff. So, yeah, care about the product that you're making. It's not all about the money, but the money is important. Not that I really need to tell you guys that, but. All right, let's see what else I got here. So like I said, the indie solo developer, he makes $20,000. Just having a team, you make double. I think a lot of the reason you're only making $20,000, which is like poverty, right? Is because it's hard to do everything yourself. And I'll tell you something, when you set out to make a game and it's like, I'm going to do the art, I'm going to do the programming, I'm going to do the music, you get really excited about that and you can do it. I think the guy that made let's see if I can think of the name of the game. It's an Xbox Live Arcade game. The guy made the whole game himself. Was it? Dust. Yeah, that was an amazing game. I loved it. Brilliant. But the guy like missed the birth of his child or something. Like he said he didn't even eat. I'm like, what? He said he worked every single day, like weekends, every single day for like 3 years making that game, and he still didn't get to get everything in it that he wanted to. So it's like, yeah, you can do it, but it's really hard, and it takes a toll on your body, on your soul. So I mean, what I'm trying to get at is it's important to find good talent. It's hard to find good talent, but don't let the difficulty of finding good talent hold you back from looking for it. You know, when you have a good team, even one other person. I mean, there are so many times when I'll be real excited about an idea, and then, you know, my partner would be like, dude, that's dumb. No, we're not doing that. No. And it's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And, you know, if it was just me, I might have spent weeks on that dumb idea until I realized it was dumb, or maybe I never realized it. You know, just that other person, it goes a long way. And, you know, the potential's higher. There's a lot more you can do with another person. So, you know, I highly recommend. Hopefully we create those kind of opportunities today, like I said. All right, I'm getting close to the end here. I've got 1 minute and 40 seconds. I think one thing I'll wrap up, and then if there's any questions, I don't know if I'm going to have time for like a couple questions. We'll see. The last thing I want to say is I think one of the lessons learned for me in running my business is that as a programmer, I tried to make really good reusable code. You know, when you go to school, and this is kind of back to that, what school teaches you and what you learn by doing, you're taught to make really good reusable code. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make this engine, and it's going to be reusable for the next 5 games. And I probably put a lot of time into maintaining these reusable components. And a lot of times what ended up happening is that by the time it would come around to where I would actually reuse it, either the technology has changed, the requirements have changed, and it turns out I never got to reuse it. So it would have been just faster to write stuff that wasn't reusable than to have done what I did. And so that was one of the lessons learned for me, and I think that's something I'm still kind of trying to balance, is quality code. I want it to be, you know, maintainable, but there are times when it's almost like if you can build something that you know you're going to use like 30 times, 30 revenue-making times in this year, then yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good investment. But if it's like, oh yeah, we're going to reuse this over the next 20 years, it's not going to happen. I mean, in 5 years, you know, things are going to change. And obviously, it's a balancing act. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's reusable that's really good. So it's just something to be mindful of is, am I actually going to reuse this? And is it worth taking the time to make it really, really good? Or is good enough good enough? So anyway, that was the end of my spiel that I kind of came up with off the cuff. Do you guys have any questions? I have 1 second. Oh yeah, we have a microphone for you coming up. Hold on just 1 second. Chris, can I have like, what, 2 minutes? 10? Oh yeah. All right. Oh, 7. Come on, man. Set me up to shoot me down.
Hello. So you said that working in a team is a lot better, more valuable. So how many people do you have on your team, if you do have one, and what are the roles of like your team members?
So for us, ClickShake Games was founded by me and Jay Zebarth. He's actually in Canada, and that's presented some interesting challenges, but technology has definitely made it really a lot easier to work with somebody remotely, because we were always on Skype, you know. But, you know, like, so he focused on like the story writing and the art direction. For like Ballads of Remus, he did, I don't know why I'm pointing like it's on the slide. So he did a lot of the design, and so I ended up doing like programming. I would do marketing. I would do our website. So I think for us, like, we had very clear-cut roles, and that really, really helped. And it was just the two of us. You know, in a lot of ways, that makes it really hard because, like, when I'm programming, I feel bad that I'm not marketing. When I'm marketing, I feel bad that I'm not programming. And, you know, I think if we had a marketing guy, I think that would have really rounded it out. And like a 3-person core team, I think that would have been even better. But I think we did pretty good as a 2-man team. Now, actually, he's doing Ballads of Remus too, and I've kind of taken on some programming work. So right now, I'm actually working with Fresh Games on some contract jobs. They've got like an 8-man team, and that's kind of nice, actually. You know, just having more people It's all here locally, so going from like working remotely with a guy to working in-house has actually been really nice. So it's like if you can find local, it's way better. I mean, this whole idea that you can outsource and save a lot of money and get a good product. What's interesting is I've heard something where in China, they're actually, I think they call it reshoring. They're taking factories, and I'm not talking about games, but I think it applies to everything. They're taking factories and putting them back in America, or maybe in a different part of the world, but nonetheless, the idea is that, it's become not necessarily quite so cost effective, to keep, outsourcing to China and stuff like that. So what that means is it can be cost effective if you find the right talent. And if we as a community cultivate the right talent, it can be cost effective to have someone that's right there. I mean, there's times when like the team will be like, oh man, we were getting ready to ship and here's this bug. And I'm like, oh man, how did I miss that? I fix it real quick, we ship it. If it was like outsourced and there's the day delay, now you're delaying your release date. I mean, it costs you money. So hopefully that is roundabout your question to your answer. Yeah.
Hey, you made totally great points. I totally agree with, just get up and just do it. Like my friend and I, Scott, in high school, we decided, all right, we're just going to just make games, like screw everybody. And here we are. So, but
nice.
So like we developed a team throughout college, and it's just been an incredible journey so far. But yeah, I just totally agree with just get up and do it. And talking about like code reusability and stuff like that, I found that, the first game I wrote, it was just a total mess. And then, took more programming classes and whatnot. But I realized the reason to write good code isn't for yourself. It's for a team that you're working with.
Yeah.
So, can the other developers understand the code and not break things? And so I just wanted to ask you, how do you guys make decisions? Who is the guy who says, yes, this is a good idea and we should do it? Like, what's the process you guys have formed around doing that?
I got to tell you, because when we started ClickShake, we were equal partners, and it was always, I just was under the assumption that we were equal partners, and so we would be equal members, and we would kind of share all the decision making. And I think what was interesting is that I don't think my partner necessarily had the same expectations. Like I think looking back, I don't necessarily even know exactly what his expectations were in that regard, who would make the decisions. I mean, I think he agreed that we would both share all the decisions, but there were times when I felt myself taking a more executive role on certain decisions, but then I would feel bad about it because we're supposed to be equal, but then I'm like, but I feel more qualified to make these decisions. And it was always this back and forth. And that's just wasting time. If it was just clear, like this area is the area where I'm going to be the one making the decisions. And maybe these are areas where we're going to make the decisions jointly. And these are areas where he's going to make the decisions. It might have gone a lot smoother. I think that's kind of one lesson learned.
I know we were talking about indie studios and how like small groups will work together and how usually it's better than just working by yourself. What point do you believe an indie studio stops becoming an indie studio and actually goes into like an actual, not AAA, but an actual like an accomplished studio?
What I would say is that anytime you focus too much on terminology and semantics, it really isn't that helpful. I mean, it's helpful in marketing because honestly, saying you're indie is, whether they intend for it to be or not, it's a marketing ploy. I don't mean to be so, cross about it, but, it is marketing. When you hear these indie guys and they're so cool, you want to check out their products, and that's a way to market. So it's important for that reason, but in terms of what you're doing, it doesn't matter. I mean, indie sometimes means you care more about the games. Sometimes it means you don't have outside funding. Sometimes it means it's out of your house as opposed to having a building. Like if you have a building and you self-funded from friends who had a lot of money and you've got 100 employees, are you still indie? It's like, what's the definition of indie I mean, honestly, you could go on gamasutra.com and read about it all day long and never find an answer, which that's a really good site if you guys don't know about it. There's a lot of really good articles. It's not Kama Sutra, it's Gama Sutra. Gamasutra.com, just for the record. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't get caught up in that. I mean, honestly, if you get 10 guys and that's what works for you, then do what works for you. If that makes you not indie, do it. I mean, don't worry about it is what I'm saying. All right.
All right, I'll show you off stage, I guess. Steve Castro, please give us a round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.